All right, thank you very much. Okay, this next speaker, I don't know if you guys know him, but he's a close personal friend of mine, and Robert Saunders.
Thank you, Donald, and especially thank you to all of you guys for showing up. I mean, this is your rally. I mean, we worked on putting it together and producing it, but it would be nothing without you here. So give yourselves an applause. Geez, where to begin? Last year I used a lot of quotes about different things, so I'm just going to try to squeeze it in, a couple in with a little bit about some other things. But anyway, this is for my... Geez, I thought I'd make it beyond this. This is for my wonderful daughters, Julia and Laura. Who are unfortunate victims of a corrupt and fraudulent anti-family court system. Because if there's anything that's family about this system, I still haven't found it in 3 years. We must transform the family law court system, and in order to do that, we must have court reform, judicial accountability, because those black robe thugs are not accountable to anybody. And our forefathers and our founding fathers have been turning over their graves for probably a couple of, several hundred years. But most importantly, to transform our society, we need equal shared parenting and a legislative bill to make that law, not only in California, but throughout the United States, and probably throughout the world as well. The change is needed now, and our children can't wait. The shoes you see lining the Capitol steps represent the souls of our missing children, the shoes of the disappeared ones. Doesn't matter if you're a 4-day-a-month father or mother, doesn't matter if, or a grandmother, grandfather, doesn't matter if you see your kids 20 hours a month, 20% of the time, 30% of the time, or whatever. If you used to put them to bed every night and you were the one that healed their scrapes and dealt with them and took care of them, whether they got pneumonia or anything else, and took them to the doctor, the hospital, played with them or whatever, and your time has been reduced, you're a victim of violence. And you're a victim of abuse, and so are your children. My case is simple. It contains all the elements of just about everybody else's, but primarily it's about social injustice, economic injustice, gender bias, religious discrimination, and more. My daughters and I have been physically assaulted by their court-appointed attorney minors counsel. I'm trying to figure out what the hell code states that it's okay for a minors counsel to do that. I haven't found that yet. I've been thrown in jail for contempt of court. This was this past March, but really, it was really for defending and fighting to protect the basic tenets of the Constitution. I don't know about you, but I take the Constitution and our rights very seriously.
Yes! Yes, we do!
And I happen to have one right in my pocket. Whenever I go to a protest meeting and hold up signs or anything, I'm on the sidewalk, I always carry one, because I remember my friend Donald Tenn said, someone came up to him one time at one of the first places I was at. I was on one side of the Capitol, he was on the other, and he said, a guy came over to me and said, well, you can't be here. And he said, of course I can. And he said, well, do you have a permit? He said, I don't need one. And he said, well, why don't you think you need one? He said, because my constitutional rights. And so I said, yeah, and I knew, and one time there's a C-SPAN truck parked across the street, and I went there and I got a whole bunch of these booklets and gave them out to a couple of friends, for that. So we take them where we go. And this is serious. I mean, some people, unfortunately, through their ignorance and their stupidity, treat this as if it's a good idea with some things to reference, but it's unfinished, and, it's kind of like you could refer to it, but it doesn't really say a lot. When I say to hell with them, you don't know what you're talking about. I learned about this when in grade school. I remember reading the Constitution. When I was a child, my brother and I ordered it on paper soaked in tea leaf to give it that old age look. I used to go to bed at night reading it. I wasn't a nerd. I was just somebody that had a map of the world on my brother's side of the bed, and and I had the Constitution with me because I took it seriously. If they're teaching it in school, it must have some value. Besides the Minors Council attacking my daughters and myself, and then going to court the next day, committing perjury and lying, and they took my rights away, my joint legal custody rights that I had for over 2 years, almost 2.5 years, because the judge said to her, to the court, and basically me, well, I'll believe her, I won't believe you. And I looked at him and I said, of course you will. Well, now he's replaced Judge McBrien. His name is Eugene Ballanon. He's a criminal.
What's his name?
Eugene Ballanon.
Oh, and he's what?
And now he's a supervising judge replacing Peter McBrien. I guess the more crimes you commit, And the more arrogant you are, the higher you move into in a level of a position. Wasn't that called the PETA principle in the 70s or 60s and 70s? You rise to your highest level of incompetence? Well, we sure know he's there. I don't know about you, but as I said, I take the Constitution and our rights very seriously. Don't you?
Yes.
And last month I fought and I defeated a fraudulent restraining order that my ex filed over 2.5 years after I was out of the house and after the alleged incidents occurred. And the judge even said to her, when we came back from lunch, he said, you know, he stopped the hearing proceedings. We came back at 1:30, stopped the hearing proceedings at about 5 to 2 and said, I've heard enough. I'm going to cut to the chase. I know Mr. Saunders can present his witnesses. He's got 4 of them in another room out there. I know he's dying to get up and speak on the witness stand. He's kind of like going, oh, God. And it's like, he said, but I've heard enough. He said, you go to, just before lunch, you were talking about what I would call one of the most horrific incidents that a parent can experience. She accused me of stuffing a towel down my 6-year-old daughter's throat at the time. My daughters are now 9.5 years old. And I cross-examined her, and I said to her, well, if I did that, you know, the alleged accusation, why didn't you take her to the hospital to make sure she was okay? Why didn't you rush to the hospital? Why didn't you call 911? Why didn't you call emergency services? Why didn't you do something to make sure that our daughter was okay? Because I sure know as hell that if you or anyone else did that to our daughter, I would have done that. I wouldn't care who did it to her. I'd be concerned to make sure that she was okay because of what they did. And the judge later said, well, you know what, not everybody responds and calls 911, not everybody responds and does this and that. And she's a medical practitioner. She's a veterinarian. When I said something to her about being a medical practitioner, it was funny, she said, well, I'm a veterinarian, I'm not a doctor. And I said, okay, fine. I said, suppose somebody brought a cat or a dog into your veterinary clinic, and somebody had shoved a washcloth or towel down their throat. What would you do? And that was all. I stopped right there, and the judge shoots me a look, and she like goes, well, I would treat him, of course. I said, thank you, asked and answered. You know? And I thank friends of mine like Donald and Pete and a bunch of other people and for helping me get the knowledge that I needed regarding defending myself. Because lawyers won't protect us. They don't care. They don't care. They're just part of the money-sucking industry. We need to go to court for each other. We need to use court-watching reports and be court watchers and watch and see the proceedings. You watch, you listen, you learn, you record the information, and then you sign an affidavit that everything that you wrote in the report is true. Not to the best of your ability or best of your memory or best of this or that, but is true and factual. So when your friend who you've gone to court for gets up there and asks you to be a witness for them, and you swear under oath that you're telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you know that's exactly what you're doing. It's a lost art in our court system. They don't deal with truth, they don't deal with justice, they don't deal with integrity, they don't deal with facts, evidence, or whatever. I'm trying to figure out, oh yeah, I know what they call it, judicial discretion. I call it judicial indiscretion, because it's part of the injustice system. Well, Pete Clark on his table over there read the Constitution, things he has, but definitely go ahead and look at those court watcher forms that he assembled. It's really, really important because we need to start getting out there. You always want at least one male and one female. I usually take, one female and 2 males with me. I jokingly say I got 2 bodyguards. And anyway, what happens is that, 3 bodyguards in a sense, because the courts systematically are trying to destroy your ability to have a factual record of the proceedings of your hearings and your trials. Why? Because the judge could say anything he wants. If there's no official record of it, who are you going to complain to?
That's right.
The Commission on Judicial Performance said to me when I filed a complaint against this idiot judge who in March, they said...
What was his name?
Oh, thank you. Judge Matthew J. Gary. I'm trying to figure out, the J is either for jerk, jackass, or something like that. But he's all of those things. I met up with him again 2 months later, and I think he thought that I was going to cower, and I was in that jail over there for 18.5 hours. When I was sitting in the jail on Power Inn Road in the basement, I sat there, I was singing Eddie Murphy's version of Roxanne from the movie 48 Hours. And I'm just sitting there, it's like in my defiance, and sitting there and whatever, and said, okay, fine. So they got me in jail. And The last vestige of a tyrant is an abuse of power.